It was a stifling summer afternoon, the kind of day where the heat clings to the skin, and the only solution seems to be taking refuge in a pool. At the local community pool, the scene was typical. Children's laughter echoed, the sound of water being splashed was constant, and adults spread out on chairs seeking shade while chatting or looking at their phones. However, on that seemingly ordinary day, an unexpected situation began to unfold near the entrance gate, breaking the tranquil rhythm of the place. A white woman, with a stern expression and controlled gestures, confronted a black teenager who was trying to enter. The tone of her voice made it clear that she was not only questioning the young man's presence there, but also his right to be in that space. The discomfort of the situation was palpable. Her words, though spoken in a relatively restrained manner, carried a weight that went far beyond the simple question, "Do you belong here?" The teenager, visibly surprised, tried to respond calmly, but the tension was growing like a storm about to break. Some heads began to turn. Curiosity, disbelief, and a hint of discomfort painted the faces of those watching. The scene quickly became the center of attention, voices rising as the atmosphere shifted from relaxed to charged. It was as if an invisible line had been crossed, and everyone felt it. Then, as if orchestrated by a cinematic script, the sound of tires gently sliding over asphalt made everyone look away. A black, shiny, and sophisticated car entered the parking lot. Its elegant design and the way it moved silently had an aura of authority, like a protagonist arriving at just the right moment. The vehicle stopped near the gate, and for a few seconds everything seemed to freeze. Voices lowered, movements slowed, and all eyes fixed on the car door. Who was there? The answer seemed laden with anticipation, as if fate was about to reveal something important. When the door finally opened, a shock rippled through the crowd like a wave. The person who exited the car was not just anyone, but a figure whose presence had the power to reverse the entire situation in seconds. The impact was immediate. The sudden silence and incredulous expressions said it all. What would happen in the next few minutes would not only change the course of that day, but also become an unforgettable, challenging, and powerful lesson for everyone who witnessed it. And for those who were not there, it's worth every second to find out what happened next. If you want to know how this story unfolded and what the surprising end to this encounter was, don't go away. Take the opportunity to like, share with others, and of course subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss impactful stories like this one. Calvin Clayton was the type of teenager who exuded confidence and calm, even in challenging situations. At 14 years old, he already carried a remarkable presence. His relaxed posture, attentive gaze, and respectful behavior were characteristics that caught the attention of those around him. Naturally athletic and full of energy, Calvin possessed an aura that attracted people, making friendships easy and creating connections in any environment. Recently, he and his mother, the renowned Governor Jasmine Clayton, had moved to that neighborhood. A respected leader, known for her impartiality and commitment to justice, Jasmine always encouraged her son to face each new beginning with optimism and determination. For Calvin, that move was more than just a new home. It was the promise of a carefree summer, the opportunity to make new friends, and above all, to find his place in a community that until then seemed welcoming. That afternoon, Calvin was especially excited. Wearing his swimsuit and carrying a towel over his shoulder, he walked to the community pool, eager to enjoy the day. The characteristic smell of chlorine in the air and the sounds of children's laughter mixed with the constant splashing of water created an almost cinematic atmosphere. For the first time since moving, he felt he was about to experience something truly special, something simple but precious, the pleasure of being just a boy on a summer day. However, neither he nor the people around him could have predicted how that seemingly ordinary moment would take an unexpected turn. Sitting under the shade of an umbrella, Linda Harrington watched everything with sharp eyes. In her 50s, Linda was known among the residents as a figure who maintained order in the neighborhood, or at least her version of order. To some, she was just a concerned and attentive neighbor. To others, an authoritative presence, always ready to question those who, in her perception, did not fit the standard she set. And on that day, it was Calvin who caught her attention. From the moment he entered through the gate, Linda watched him with a stern expression, as if the simple fact of not recognizing him was enough reason to suspect him. She didn't hesitate, stood up, adjusted her posture, and walked towards the boy with the firmness of someone who believed she was doing something necessary. "Excuse me, young man, who are you?" she asked, her voice firm and laden with authority. Calvin turned, surprised, but maintained a polite smile. "Hi, ma'am, I'm Calvin. I moved here a few weeks ago with my mother. I live nearby." Linda's eyebrows furrowed and her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Moved? Well, I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years and I've never seen you before," she said, her tone now more incisive. Calvin hesitated, sensing the uncomfortable direction of the conversation. Still, he remained calm. "We moved to Pinewood Lane, ma'am. I just came to swim and enjoy the afternoon." But Linda didn't seem satisfied. She crossed her arms, her gaze hard as stone. "So you must have some identification to prove you live here, right?" The question caught Calvin by surprise. "Documents? Who brings identification to go to the pool?" He blinked, confused, but tried to respond calmly. "I didn't bring anything, ma'am. I'm just here to swim. If you need, I can tell you where I live. Pinewood Lane, number 24. Calvin's response, though polite, seemed only to fuel Linda's suspicions. "Proving you live here shouldn't be a problem for someone who truly belongs to this neighborhood," she retorted, raising her voice slightly. Around them, the usual buzz of the pool began to dissipate. The children were still playing, but the adults, seated in their chairs, started to notice the impasse. Eyes turned to Calvin and Linda, curious and cautious. Calvin felt the weight of dozens of eyes watching him, but he didn't let it shake his posture. He took a deep breath and responded, maintaining a respectful tone. "Ma'am, I swear I live here. My mother is Jasmine Clayton. We just moved in. I just wanted to swim. Nothing more." Mentioning his mother's name might have caused a pause, but Linda seemed even more determined to challenge the boy. "Important name or not, if you can't prove you belong here, then I suggest you find something else to do," she snapped, her voice now loud enough for everyone around to hear. Silence settled over the area. The lifeguard, sitting at his post, nervously averted his gaze as if trying to decide whether to intervene. Some parents whispered among themselves, exchanging looks of discomfort, while others remained still, their expressions neutral. For Calvin, the situation seemed surreal. He hadn't done anything other than show up there to enjoy the day like any other young person. Yet, he was being treated as an intruder. The calm he displayed hid a growing knot in his throat, but he wouldn't let Linda see that. "I'm not here to cause trouble, ma'am," he said, his voice firm but serene. "I just want to enjoy the pool like everyone else." Linda's response came almost immediately, filled with disdain. "If you really live here, then prove it. Otherwise, I'll have to call security," she said, pulling her phone out of her pocket. Around them, the small crowd of onlookers began to murmur. Some seemed to silently agree with Linda, as if she was doing a favor for the neighborhood. Others, however, looked uncomfortable with the scene, exchanging disapproving glances. But still, no one intervened. No one stood up to defend Calvin or question Linda's actions. Calvin's heart was beating faster now, but he refused to show any sign of weakness. As Linda dialed, he clenched his fists and looked around, seeking some support, some voice that could rise against this. But all he found was silent faces, spectators who preferred to stay on the sidelines. At that moment he realized it wasn't just a personal conflict, it was a silent test for that community. Calvin knew that losing control would be the worst possible response. He had been taught to remain calm, even when the world around him seemed to crumble in injustice. The humiliation he felt at that moment was hard to describe. The shame of being questioned in public without reason, the silent gaze of everyone around, and the feeling of being alone against something much bigger than him. Still, his voice remained firm, almost tranquil as he replied, refusing to yield. "You don't need to call anyone. I'm not trespassing. I live here." But his words, so calm and measured, seemed to carry no weight against the narrative Linda Harrington had created. Linda was already on the phone, her voice laden with an artificial urgency that only increased the tension. "Hello? Yes, this is Linda Harrington. I'm at the community pool, and there's an unauthorized person here. Yes, I think you better send someone immediately." Each word hit Calvin like an invisible slap. Unauthorized person? The phrase echoed in his mind like an unjust accusation, filled with implications he knew all too well. He looked around, hoping someone would intervene, someone would confirm what he was saying. But no. The crowd remained silent, the discomfort on their faces evident, but no one dared to act. The lifeguard, sitting in his chair, fidgeted nervously, looking down but avoiding involvement. Minutes that seemed eternal passed until two security guards quickly entered through the gates. Their presence added even more weight to the atmosphere, as if something serious was about to happen. One of them, a tall man with a rigid posture, walked straight towards Calvin holding a clipboard, his voice firm and authoritative. "We received a report of a possible trespass here. Can you tell us your name and why you're here?" Calvin took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, though he could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes fixed on him. "My name is Calvin Clayton. I live in this neighborhood. I'm just here to swim." The guard exchanged a brief look with Linda, who remained with her arms crossed, her presumptuous expression as if she was satisfied to have solved the problem. "Do you have any ID, proof of residency, something to confirm what you're saying?" the guard asked, showing no emotion in his voice. Calvin shook his head, his heart racing. "I didn't bring anything. I came straight from school and just wanted to enjoy the pool." The second security guard, a shorter woman with a robust build, intervened, her tone even harsher. "So there's no way to confirm you actually live here, is that it? Is there someone who can verify your residency?" Calvin nodded quickly, seeing a possible way out. "Yes, I can call my mother. She's at work now, but she can confirm." He barely finished the sentence when Linda interrupted, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, please. If he really lived here, he wouldn't have so much trouble proving it." Her comment made something inside Calvin shiver. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the way she dismissed his truth without hesitation, as if he were invisible. The first guard hesitated, looking between Linda and Calvin as if trying to decide who was right. The weight of the moment was unbearable. Silence filled the air with muffled whispers coming from the small crowd around. Calvin felt his hands tremble slightly as he took his phone out of his pocket. He sent a short and direct message to his mother. "Mum, can you come here? There's a problem at the pool." Time seemed to drag. Every second felt like an eternity. Linda watched him with a satisfied smile, as if silently challenging him to find a way out of that situation. Then something changed. The distant sound of a car, followed by the soft noise of tires sliding on asphalt, made everyone's attention instantly turn to the pool entrance. A luxurious black car, shiny and imposing, stopped outside. Its polished exterior reflected the sunlight, like a silent warning that something important was about to happen. The sound of the door opening cut through the murmurs of the crowd, as if time had stopped. Calvin froze in place, the phone still in his trembling hands. He knew that car. He knew exactly what it meant. The door opened, and the figure that emerged seemed to completely change the atmosphere. Jasmine Clayton, the governor, his mother, got out of the car with a posture that radiated silent authority. Impeccably dressed in her work attire, she advanced with firm steps, the heels of her shoes echoing on the pavement, the sound resonating like a beat marking the silence of the crowd. Every pair of eyes was fixed on her. The guards, Linda, the onlookers, who until now had remained still. Governor Clayton stopped a few meters from the group, her eyes slowly moving from the guards to Linda before finally settling on Calvin. Without losing her balance or composure, she approached her son, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, her voice calm but laden with a firmness that demanded answers. The silence was almost deafening. Linda, who until then exuded confidence, took an instinctive step back, her posture stiffening, but the visible discomfort. I didn't know he was your son," Linda stammered, stumbling over her words. "I was just trying to make sure everything was in order here, Governor." Jasmine raised an eyebrow, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Order?" she repeated, her tone cutting and full of disbelief. "And what exactly gave you the authority to interrogate a teenager in public? A teenager who, by the way, is a resident of this neighborhood and has as much right as anyone else to be here." The guards tried to intervene, their voices filled with nervousness. "Governor Clayton, we were just responding to a concern call." She interrupted them, her gaze firm. "A call that, from what I can see, should never have been made. Did you even hear his side before jumping to conclusions?" The question hung in the air unanswered. Linda, visibly shaken, tried to defend herself, her words coming out quickly and disordered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I just—" Jasmine cut her off, her voice calm but irrefutable. "You thought he didn't belong here because you didn't recognize him. What exactly was your assumption based on?" Linda opened her mouth, but found no words. The governor then turned to the guards, her voice firm but constructive. "This pool, like any other place, is governed by the same anti-discrimination laws that are in effect throughout the state. I expect you to reflect on how you handled this situation and seek improvements. And this applies to everyone here." With that, she turned to Calvin, her expression softening. "Are you okay, son?" Calvin nodded, finally feeling the weight of the moment lessen. He was no longer alone. The silence that had settled after Governor Jasmine Clayton's arrival began to break, this time not by murmurs of curiosity or tension, but by voices filled with reflection. A father sitting by the pool was the first to speak, his voice low but laden with guilt. "I should have intervened earlier. I saw what was happening, but I stayed silent. I'm sorry, Calvin." His confession opened the door for others. "This isn't right. No one should have to go through something like this to enjoy a day at the pool," replied a nearby mother, her tone filled with regret. The murmurs grew, and soon the crowd was united in a collective expression of disapproval. All eyes turned to Linda Harrington, who now seemed a shadow of the confident figure she had been minutes ago. Her face turned red with embarrassment, and she nervously fidgeted with her bag, avoiding the gaze of those around her. The silent strength of the community, which had remained neutral until then, finally found its voice. Without saying a word, Linda began to hastily gather her things. Her hunched body, slumped shoulders, and quick steps conveyed undeniable discomfort. She left the pool area in a hurry, but the whispers, the looks, and the weight of the moment followed her like a shadow. It was then that the lifeguard, who had remained still and silent throughout the entire incident, got down from his chair and walked towards Calvin and Governor Clayton. His face reflected a mix of regret and determination. "I should have said something earlier," he admitted, his voice filled with guilt. "This is on me too. I promise no one else will have to go through something like this. I will report what happened and insist that the training here improves. This can never happen again." Governor Clayton nodded, her expression softening slightly. Her gaze, though firm, showed that she recognized the sincere remorse in the young man. "Admitting the mistake is an important first step," she replied. "But understand, this isn't just about policies or rules, it's about people. It's about recognizing our own prejudices and having the courage to act when we see something wrong." She then turned to the crowd, her voice serene yet powerful, cutting through the air like an undeniable truth. "This is a learning moment for all of us," she began, her words laden with an authority that didn't intimidate but inspire. "Discrimination, whether overt or subtle, has no place here or anywhere else. It's not enough to just avoid doing wrong. We have a responsibility to stand against injustice when we see it, to use our voices to silence it. Silence is often complicit in these situations, but action is what prevents them from happening again." The governor's words echoed around the pool like calm waves after a storm. Some spectators nodded vigorously, others looked down, visibly moved. A light round of applause began, timid at first, but growing as more people joined in. The sound was a silent demonstration of solidarity, a collective acknowledgement that what had happened there needed to be a lesson, not just another event to be forgotten. Calvin stood quietly beside his mother, her figure now more relaxed. The weight of the humiliation he had felt had diminished, replaced by silent pride. He didn't need to raise his voice or lower himself to respond to the injustice. His dignity, protected by his mother's strength and the community's awakening, was more than enough. As mother and son walked toward the exit, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the sidewalk, as if symbolizing the end of that painful chapter. Calvin walked with his head held high, his shoulders no longer burdened by the tension of the moment. When they reached the car, Governor Clayton gently placed her hand on her son's shoulder, a simple gesture but full of love and confidence. She smiled at him, the pride evident on her face. "You handled yourself with dignity today," she said softly. "I'm very proud of you." Calvin looked at her and smiled, the day's fatigue softened by the comfort of her presence. "Thank you, Mum. I couldn't have done it without you." That brief moment between them seemed to close the day on a note of hope. Calvin opened the car door and got in, but before closing it, he looked one last time at the pool. The place where he had been questioned and humiliated was no longer just a negative memory. Now it was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that he was not alone, and that the truth, when spoken firmly, could transform even the most difficult moments. As the luxurious black car drove away, the silence around the pool had been replaced by a different energy, an energy of reflection, of change, and perhaps of collective remorse. For Calvin, the day had been a trial, but also a powerful lesson in courage and solidarity. His mother not only defended his right to belong, but showed that community how important it was to stand up. As the pool slowly returned to normal, a message resonated in the minds of everyone who had watched. It's not enough to stay silent in the face of injustice. There is strength and unity in using your voice, even when it seems easier not to get involved. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that everyone has the right to be respected and defended, share this video with others. Don't forget to leave your comment, give a like, and click the notification bell for more impactful stories like this one. United, we can be the change.